In this video, we're going to create a simple line chart. So this is the Forms and Tables design system, link in the description. I learned a lot while building out these charts and I want to share it with you. So we'll just start from scratch. So to create a responsive line chart, when you adjust the width and height, it still looks good and it adjusts accordingly. And we're going to do that with a combination of auto layout and positioning. So the first step is we're going to create the axes. And so we'll type out numbers. And make sure the number here is aligned to the right. This will make sense in a little bit. So we have the number and we'll just duplicate that out. And let's do this. Let's have 8 numbers. And then we're going to take this and now we're going to duplicate it. We'll create our x-axis labels. So let's do a line center now. And let's create 6 of these. Now we're going to create our lines. So we'll do 8 lines to correspond to the numbers. It is tempting to just group all of this or put a frame around it or even doing a auto layout, but that is not what we want. And then if you just create a frame around this, so frame selection, or if you group it, when you do try to resize it, it's not responsive. It's not resizing accordingly. So just undo that. And I'll show you the technique I used to make this fully responsive. So the first thing we're going to do is select all the lines. Let's just make this like a lighter mid-gray type of color. Okay, I have all the lines selected. We'll make this auto layout, so Shift A. So now this auto layout wrapped around it. And now we're going to click Enter to select each one of the lines within this frame. And we want the width to fill, which it is. So that looks good. So now when I resize this, it is adjusting. But what about the height? That is not what we want. So what we're going to do is we are going to distribute them by double clicking here. And so what that is doing is distributing them so it will always be proportionate, the space in between the lines, and it will fill this container. So now it is filling and it is responsive. But now notice that the numbers aren't lining up to this. So it is tempting to do something where you create auto layout like this and then start duplicating them so the numbers line up. That will cause problems down the road. We'll take the Y labels and Shift A. So now this is an auto layout. Let's again distribute this so it is just like the line chart. When you resize it, it is responsive. And then we'll do something similar here. So select all the X labels and Shift A. This is an auto layout, and we'll distribute them evenly by double clicking. So now this is all looking good. So now the first step is to take the X axis here and then add it to this plot. And you want to do this in order. We have this selected, we select the frame above and then Shift A. Now this is all in an auto layout, and let's see. Okay, so this is working. Make sure that this is filling and this should fill as well. So that looks good. And now let's see, this is not what we want. And the reason being is we want this here of all the lines, this auto layout within the parent auto layout, we want this, the height to fill the container as well. So as you're building out a chart, keep that in mind. If there is an issue with the responsive nature, if it ever is a problem, just start clicking into the sub frames and making sure that they are filling accordingly. However, this here, we do not want it to fill. So the X here, this, we want it to hug. We want it to fill the width, but hug here, because if we do fill container and now we resize, that is not what we want, because this is starting to adjust when you resize it. So this here, again, we want it to stay hugging the content. And that is no longer looking good, and that's because we lost the height here. So this is how it can get tricky, is when you edit something, it can kind of change the other things within that parent frame. Okay, so we have this, and now we are going to draw out our line. So we'll use the pen tool, and we'll just create like some type of basic line that's kind of going up. And we'll click Enter. We have our line. Let's click Enter again and distribute to have the same space between them. So I selected each one of the point with this line and distribute horizontal spacing Okay, that looks good. And now let's make this line a blue color. So in the design system, I have these colors defined, but just pick any type of blue color. Now we're going to throw this in our plot. This does not look good. It's not responding. The reason being is because this, first off, needs to be positioned absolute. So to ignore auto layout, you click here. Okay, this is looking good, but we still have the issue. It's not resizing. And so now we're going to adjust the positioning. So we're going to select this line, and we're, instead of left and top, which is the default here, we're going to do left and right, and then top and bottom. So now when you resize, it resizes accordingly, both width and height. Okay, so now let's just adjust this so it takes up the width of the plot here. Okay, so now we're almost on our way to having a fully responsive line chart. You could do something similar for creating any other type of charts that are plotted in this way, like a bar chart. Okay, so now I'm going to take the Y labels and then select this frame itself and then do auto layout. It is important you do it in this order or else things will go wrong. So now we want the space in between these two to be 8. You can adjust it to whatever you want. And notice how the numbers aren't aligning with the lines. And so to make this work, first we're going to select the Y coordinates and we're going to make the height fill the container. Okay, it's still not adjusting the lines. And now we're going to have to mess with the padding. So we click this open. This is the top and bottom. We're going to adjust the bottom spacing. But before we do that, let's add a little bit of padding for the actual lines so we can have this meet this line in the center. So let's just do 10. So now that pushed it down. And now we can adjust the spacing between the lines and the X here. Let's just do 8. Okay, that looks better. Adjust it how you see fit. Now we're going to adjust the bottom and top padding. So the top, to make it line up, you just kind of have to eyeball it a bit. So it looks like 3 works. And then for bottom, just keep increasing it until it aligns with that line. But notice how it's kind of missing some of these other lines. And that is because there's only 7 here. We forgot to add one, or I forgot to add one. So I'll just duplicate this. So I selected this text, click Command D. So it duplicates. And now you can see it is adjusting to the line. So now let's see what we have. These 2 layers in here, they are not filling. So we want to make this with fill. So creating charts, it is just a combination of having these frames within their parent frame and making sure that they're either hugging or filling accordingly. So this is looking good, but this should also fill the height. Okay. So a lot of trial and error went into figuring all this out, but okay, we have our basic line chart and it is looking pretty good. Okay, so now the last thing we want to do is we want to make this, the Y coordinates, we want this, the width, not to fill, but to hug. And I'll show you why in a second. So if I start making adjustments here, so I change the label, that's not what we want. We want this to push out and this to push in. And the way to do that, the way it's set up, we hug the frame here. Okay, so that's looking good. Now let's say we want to change this label. Okay, see, it's pushing it in. It's pushing the line in. If I did this in a different way, it would cause issues. And I learned that through creating the charts for forms and tables. So that is the tutorial. We now have a fully responsive line chart. And now you can go ahead and like make this a component and you can create variants of it. You can take this line and we could make it go the opposite direction. So let's just flip this vertically. And then we can say this one is down and this one is up. And you can keep changing things and nest things and do whatever you want. But now we have a fully responsive component with the 2 variants. So you could imagine how complex this could become. So that is the line chart, and thank you.